opinion on any deck in Hearthstone, Raven.
Well, you know, yes, I feel like this is one that just isn't talked about, but some people play. You know,
I think Token Druid is unplayable garbage.
Well, you need to have a word with Casie then for next week, because he has it.
I did actually see Casie earlier. I think, you know, Tic Tac had said to me earlier on that he felt Priest was going to be the highest win rate class. And as Lorinda posted some stats on classes, Tic Tac atted me and said, look, Priest is doing pretty well. And then Casie got involved in that thread as well. So I did sort of catch during the broadcast that Casie did also say, yeah, Druid sucks. I don't know why anyone would play that deck. And I don't know like how much of that is memeing and how much of that is him realizing that he maybe made a mistake in bringing Druid this time around, but we shall see.
All I need to know is where that thread is so I can reply with, hey, look at Hunter's win rate.
Yeah.
And then just decide I'm right. Most importantly, though, we are ready to get into our game number 1, match number 3 of the day. This is a decider match, so the player who loses is going to be gone for the week, and the winner will continue on till tomorrow. Swidz on the top on that Rogue, Casie on this Paladin, and Casie, at least for now, Sol, getting off to the start.
This is indeed the start. Basically any tempo board-based matchup, step number 1, you queue into your game, you stare at your hand very carefully to see if the coin appears or not, and when it doesn't, you're very, very happy. Then you try and find a 1-3 and hand a Vidal. That is basically how you play this deck in tempo-based matchups, and Casie has achieved all 3 of those things expertly.
Yep, does have the hand of Vidal that Shot Corey is getting absolutely slammed straight away. Casie is going to go for that trade right now. Going to hold on to the first day of school to have a 0-mana proc for Penflinger next turn, which I do like, but everything's starting to line up. Atonement normally draws a good card with it drawing specifically a holy spell from the deck, so all looking pretty good there for Casie, but Swidz doesn't have too bad of cards on his side of the board either, especially with that, you know, the efficiency of the Octopus there, making this turn pretty interesting actually.
Yeah, and since we've been on the subject of like when do you proc the bot so far today, like that's one that clearly makes sense, right? Like if you don't do it, Swidz is just going to do it the next turn, but he will have drawn 1 extra card off his draw on the turn. So just bumping in the 3 and reducing the amount of discounted cards by 1 does just make sense there.
Yep, simple difference is a tradable minion versus a non-tradable weapon from the earlier game when we were talking about it. But he does get Mankrik and the One Thief down, devolving missiles. Fantastic pickup there for Swidz. And, things are going pretty well for both players, especially now Casey's picked up that Truth Seeker for a little bit later down the line too.
Hey, loser! Wasn't me!
Cogmaster not really a good card in any way, shape or form, at least in the current game. Not too many mechs knocking around.
No. I do appreciate that the ability to go Cogmaster Annoyatron is just back in Hearthstone now. All right, like that start exists.
Oh, there is just Efficient and then Og Merchant now again. But this is the weird part of Rogue, and the thing that's really tough is Efficient Octobot, Og Merchant, and then Watch Post looks very good, but then he just has a 3-mana Ogromancer and a 0-mana Devolving Missiles, which is strong, but that's it for Swidz, right? There's no card draw there, yep. There's just one strong board. And I'm wondering if there's ever a reason to even hold any of this. I really don't know here. It's a really tough turn.
It's one of the reasons why Rogue is just, you know, arguably another problematic class in the game right now. You know, being one of the classes that has been confirmed to be getting some kind of nerf treatment in the upcoming expansion is because, you know, you can have all these incredibly efficient, cheap tempo tools like Prize Plunderer and Shadow Step and have access to, you know, being one of the only 2 classes in the game that has access to Jandis, which is just the biggest pile of stats that exists in the game right now. That would all be fine if you also then at some point ran out of cards.
Yeah.
But they never do, because they have Secret Passage on top of that, and now they have Field Contact on top of that as well. So they have 2 of the best card draw engines in the entire game, as well as some of the best tempo engines in the game. So that kind of leaves them in a position with no weakness, and it's fine for classes to have incredible strength as long as that is compensated by holes in their game plan that you can exploit. And Rogue just doesn't really have many of those right now.
Even this turn here from Casie, it's okay on one hand. Was it like a Bad trade there, I think. Was that other minion 3 attack?
What happened?
I think he traded a 1/1 into a less than 3 attack minion and face tanked the 3 attack. But I might be wrong though, I can't remember what the third minion was. But anyway, moving swiftly on, even just that Libram of Justice was a pretty bad turn, and I'm not meaning that Casie was wrong to do it, it's just the whole turn was kill a couple of minions, right? He stopped the reduction in hand with the Octo, but that's felt like that's about it, and already you can see that Swidz now has access to the Jandis, and once more I'll say it, this isn't just played. Oh, there we go, Swidz knows where it's at.
Yep, pretty average again.
All of the stats.
18 stats, which is 2 4 5s on average. These both, in fact, have upside. So yeah, here we are.
Casie switching it up now, Libram of Judgment in the trade. Oh, okay, I didn't see the Ogre Merchant there. The ping into the Ogremancer. Cleans this up. There's still the Tiger though, and again, all of that just to kill off a bit of the Jandis and Ogremancer board. It's tough.
Oh, the Mankrik enraged timing though, very, very huge. It's always the worst time to see that, right? Where if you've just made a big tempo push, you're like, okay, I've actually got some control of the board now, and then suddenly out he comes, screaming like an enraged idiot and smacking you in the face.
Swindle there for Swidz as well. Yeah, he hadn't tested the secret for Flurry, right? For Yogg, sorry.
For Yogg, yeah.
Okay, the hand is drying up. He hasn't got hold of a what's the field contact? So he's not been able to really go crazy with the card draw, so
So many options.
is he actually going to kill this and just pass? Like Penflinger Brain Freeze passing?
It's possible. Like, obviously, this Tiger will be the illusion version of what he picks since it had stealth. Like, he's almost certainly going to be able to do that, and we can still see that from the animation. So he's probably just leaving it there until there's a ridiculously juicy trade that he can pick up, or he can just ship it face for game-ending damage, which is
or just
something
face
else that you can look
damage.
for.
Yeah,
That does seem
especially because
ambitious,
Mankrik can kill off this 4-2, right? Like, no problem, won't even care. So even better now, he can trade the... Oh, okay. I wonder whether he's going to trade the 1-2, Penflinger, then Devolving, and then maybe keep his Mankirk bigger.
Mankirk.
I always call him Mankirk, because I call him Kirk, just for short. The captain.
Right. I just want to start singing about climbing a mountain now, and I know no one gets that reference, but if you do, you understand how legendary that song is.
It's my secret song. I don't get any new references.
The secret passage does end up being huge, though. Did not find an additional card draw engine. That's normally where secret passage is at its most disgusting, when you secret passage into more card draw and then it just completely fuels you for the rest of the game. That's not what Swidz has ended up with here.
No, he's going to have to just make do, isn't he, with a mediocre one here. It's okay, he clears the board, he still has control of it, and we can see Casey's not really got a lot going for his hand here. But it definitely could have been better. And Venomous Scorpion actually isn't too terrible right now. Could get him, Swindle, get him something good.
Wasn't me.
Okay. Nothing impactful in terms of unique effects right now, but just, decent pile of stats out. 2 1-drops is nothing to be sniffed at.
Fight! Glory awaits! Reporting for duty.
Oh, no card draw.
Yeah, once again, it's secret passage number 2 or either of the 2 field contacts that he is really looking for at this point. And, you know, any card draw found off that Discover would have helped him get towards those.
Would you ever get Strike here just to deal with a, like, Libram of Hope off the top? Is that too silly a thing to plan for? It's just backstab. Does it matter with these minions? Ambush?
Right.
Then the minions will actually just farm up the ambush or something will kill the ambush anyway. And you've still got to hit through a potential Divine Shield for some of these minions that Casie could play.
Right.
I just think Strike is good enough. He has the mana because he doesn't have the card draw. I guess the secret could like make Casie play weird, but the one problem you've got in that with that thought path is well, your opponent can't play weird if they have no cards. They've got to just play their cards, right? Like there's no choice. So, I think I would have gone for Strike there, honestly.
You're welcome, Toad of the Wilds fans. I know you're out there. There we go. Got to see competitive play in Grandmasters.
It's a great looking card, isn't it?
Yeah. It does have quite the cult following, which is old Toad of the Wild.
Big draw there with the weapon plus commander to guarantee draw a minion.
Does proc the ambush, but I think he will definitely take that exchange for a little bit of guaranteed card draw. Well, yeah, we've talked about how, you know, Swidz has been running out of stuff this game. It's actually pretty rare to see Paladin running out of stuff as well. You know, the way the deck is built right now, it is kind of similar to the package that used to be run before the secrets came in, where you had, you know, Salet's Pride that drew Novice Engineers or Loot Hoarder or whatever it was you were playing in your deck and kind of all came together to draw cards very, very quickly. This does kind of have that same thing where, like, you know, functionally the sword draws a bunch of cards, and then you also have Knight of Anointment that draws cards. You have Hand of Adal that draws cards. So suddenly, as soon as you start drawing cards, you do then get through your deck very, very quickly. And as soon as you hit Lady Liadrin, which is a card that you have a tutor for in Talon Fordring, you just have a full hand of resources being made from that Lady Liadrin as well.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is when you hit halfway through your deck, you should have expected to draw one or the other, right? Which then that sorts out your late game most of the time. So yeah, a little bit unfortunate for Casie that he's not managed to get hold of it. And 2 wicked stabs now means Swidz is just not too far away from ending this game.
Nope. Yeah, they are going rank 3 next turn when he hits 10 mana, so that is potentially game over.
Nope.
If Casie cannot put up a huge wall here, and I don't think... Well, I guess with the Outdoor Truthseeker, he can block the dagger swing going through for at least 1 turn. But Penfling is still something that he has to account for.
It's just too little too late, isn't it, really?
Yep.
Yeah, and look at this as well. Like, Swidz is on 28 after that hit. Like, he's took no damage this game. Oh, seems good. Just have to worry about Yogg.
Loser! Hey, loser!
And very swiftly gets the good news. And it's going to be game number 1 going to Swidz. The double wicked stab. Honestly, that's what I told you earlier. Just the card feels terrifying, especially in the late game. It's so much damage for so little mana, and paired with those Penflingers, it is absurd. But does mean Swidz takes that lead and gets the win with the Rogue over the Paladin. Definitely expected on my side, Subtle, but still great for Swidz there to go up 1-0.
Yeah, huge for sure. I would say, you know, perhaps expected, you know, at 0-0 series starting, but when we saw the start that Casie had, with 1-3 into Hand of Adal, and when we saw that on the other side, Swidz's hand is quite starved. Like, he played that whole game without having access to a field contact. He ripped 1 secret passage, and it was a pretty mediocre secret passage, which perhaps just goes to show how good even a mediocre secret passage is. You know, maybe that was one that could have gone in Casey's favor in some other worlds, but, you know, Swidz scrapped and he did what he could. And I think the longest...
Just sorry then. Good replay. That was what I wanted to know.
Yeah. Without, ignore the fact there was a Penflinger in hand. If he hadn't have taken that extra damage, Casie would have won that game easily. But yeah, I think Swidz played that game very, very nicely. With a key element of greed that I do think you have to pay attention to as Rogue is do not wicked stab something unless you absolutely have to, because those things going face, both of them in the late game, is such an obnoxious amount of damage. I think so many of us had a similar reaction to stab when we started seeing the rank upgrade cards, and a lot of them just increased by increments of 1. And then we saw the Rogue one, and it started at 2, and we went, okay, that card's kind of an underwhelming replacement for Eviscerate. Wait, it goes 2, 4, 6? What do you mean? That's 2, 3, 4. Yeah. That's absurd. Why have you done that? That's nonsense. So just, for 4 mana, you can dish out 12 damage as long as you're in the late game. It's just such a ridiculous ability to have towards the end game that I think, now players are even coming out with kind of hyper-focused lists that do just focus on drawing their deck and then just throwing burn at face once they get to 10 mana and they have the whole deck in their hand, which I think is a really interesting way to approach it as well. But yeah, I think Swidz just being a little bit greedy with those wicked stabs did pay out very, very nicely for him in the end.
And we are going to see Cariel Rome played in this list. No Kazakus as far as I can see. Sotol Swidz also running the Ogremancer, and his secret makeup is also a little bit different as well. 2 Avenge and only 1 Galloping Savior in this version, so that's where just the small changes could make some big impacts, especially if he's looking to play a little bit more board focused. Maybe the Ogremancer actually makes that Avenge choice happen, because if Ogremancer is being played, your opponent might not play tons of cards to stop the 2/2s, but then Avenge gets better because you just have more minions on board more of the time.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting list for sure. Obviously, we've been talking about Cariel a lot. Clearly, we prefer it to the Kazakus, which makes a lot of sense, but there is not that additional burst damage with the big weapon that we saw from Casey's side. So it is a deck that has to play a slightly different game plan, but I do think it can operate quicker and smoother in the early game because of the addition of Cariel, right? If you curve out into Cariel, you can kind of skip a lot of times the Aldor Truth Seeker portion of the game and just immediately start jamming cheap Librams just as a tempo follow-up to playing that card on 4 if you have them in your hand, and just potentially overwhelm your opponent out of the game, which I think is a very nice option to have available to yourself.
Yeah, it takes its place, especially leading into Libram of Hopes, I've found as well. It can be really nice to bridge that gap. So pretty cool overall spell mage here for Casie. And again, this is kind of the list I was talking about a little bit earlier, obviously a bit different with Ice Barrier in there and the Netherwind Portal, but the double Flame Strike, double Mask of Cthulhu going heavy on those 7 drops. But what do you make of these secrets, Sotol? Do you think this is more like the if we weren't aware of potential nerfs, the next evolution of Spell Mage with this secret package?
I do like playing 2 secrets in those available spots. I do, as always, want to make the argument that one of those secrets is better than the other one more often, and you should play 2 of that card instead of 1 of each of them. But generally, I do think 2 secrets are the right cards to be thrown in that spot, with I think maybe Cone of Cold being a close competitor. But yeah, Casie is playing the 4 now Grand Slam list, and he is playing 0 Ring Toss, which I think we saw RDU playing 2 Ring Toss even. So there is a pretty big discrepancy between the build of the deck there. But I think it's a super interesting deck building puzzle. I think building the right version of the deck is actually a lot more interesting than playing the deck in a lot of positions when you get over kind of just how entertaining the first few times you play Deck of Lunacy is, because getting the right balance between optimizing your deck for when the powerful thing happens, when you go Lunacy on 2, like how do I make my deck as strong as possible, but then also having those cards be playable and find win conditions for you when you don't have that, which a lot of the time is just a straight up burn based game plan. So you have to think about like what cards help me get in little pieces of chip damage, what cards can like stall the game out for an extra turn and help me burn out, which is where something like Cone of Cold or Flurry would come in, for example. And if you want to split that difference between Cone of Cold and Flurry, well, one of those turns into a 6 mana card when you play Deck of Lunacy and the other one doesn't. So suddenly that decision becomes very easy. So there's all these factors that kind of bounce off each other back and forth when it comes to building the deck together. But then you kind of just press play and Jesus takes the wheel as to whether you get Deck of Lunacy or not and what happens from there.
But that is a good point, though, you raise about, sometimes you need to balance the defensive options versus offensive. And those two secrets kind of do that he's including, right? Ice Barrier, of course, gains you 8 armor a lot of the time and extends the game. Mage kind of needs health. It is a bit susceptible to just early aggro pushes. But then also Netherwind Portal does not only create a minion, but also can create some aggressive damage, some chip damage in itself to help out with the burn plan. So I do like those two options. I will say maybe it shouldn't be put in the list for obvious reasons, but the new Water Elemental secret has just single-handedly beaten me multiple times in the past, so that is one to keep an eye out on. But obviously in a no natural minion deck, it's kind of a hard secret to justify. But let's get right into it. Game number 2, Swidz on that Paladin, Casie on the Mage. And for me, Sol, right now, this feels pretty close to just a 50-50 matchup, at least in my experience.
It does, yeah. This is by no means the deepest point of analysis you will ever see me make, but I do think Paladin wins a large percentage of the time when there is no lunacy, and I think they lose a large percentage of the time when there is a lunacy in the early game from the Mage. Now, that sounds like a very reductionist point, but that's not always the case for every matchup in the game, right? And I think that is why it does become very close to 50-50. I think Paladins don't have the tools to deal with just that Grand Slam being played over and over again from a Mage. Yeah. They just fall over. They just collapse. They can't really do anything about it. They do have all the tools to keep making boards, keep pressuring, while also sustaining and healing themselves so they don't get burned out of the game. So the two possible game plans that mages tend to go down based on whether they find the lunacy or not, Paladin is very resistant to one of them and very weak to the other.
And you look at it, right? Some of the single target sort of mid-range removals that Mage has. A Pexis Blast, okay, well that's cool, but you probably just give my other minion Avenge or something, right? And then same with Fireball as well. Those kind of don't work as well versus Paladin. And then there's Oh My Yogg to consider, which messes with things even more. Because the more expensive the card is, the kind of crazier the outcome of Oh My Yogg I've found, whether it's good or bad. So yeah, we'll see if that comes into it right now. The coin. Little tester there for Oh My Yogg as well. And again, now he has to sit back and go, well, if I brain freeze the 1/3, he pretty much has to devolve, right? Or he's just going to be facing down an avenged commander there.
Yeah, sequencing very, very tricky this turn. It looks like he is going to look to... Because even now, right, he can choose to devolve first to guarantee these procs, or... he can choose to further test for more secrets, get the 3/4 on board, and then try and devolve that as well, right, to reduce the overall power on board, which both have the potential to backfire in different ways. So I don't think that's an obvious decision, and I don't think it's right or wrong either way. It's just kind of both options present a risk.
Yeah, and sometimes this the Moag feels bad from an early first day of school because you generally want your sword equipped, but at this point. It's not half bad at all, right? In another turn also, it's just going to get a free 6 damage swing. Oh, a couple of swings. So it's actually not worked out too bad. Whereas Casie definitely on the back foot now. A Pexis Blast is nice, but a whole turn away. Ruined Orb and Cram Session just won't really cut it versus what Swidz can put down.
Yeah, already looking like the Paladin is getting set up to run away with this one. Just too efficient, too early, start too fast.
And then there's an Ogremancer next turn.
Yep. Just has all the tools. Even saw Casie, Casie refused to slow down this game, which I guess is rather fitting for Casie as a player, but figuratively rather than literally in this case, where a secret was summoned going into his turn 2, and he just slammed the Incanter's Flow into that secret, running the risk that it could have been Oh My Yogg, which I think is the right decision. I think Flow you risk, Lunacy you don't, is generally a good rule of thumb into that position. So even after not slowing down to respect these secrets, he's still finding himself pretty far behind the game. That transformed into Raise Dead, which he's had 0 minions die so far this game.
I also find that fairly interesting as well, because maybe it's just the way I would play this game, but I would slightly increase the value, or value more, should I say, the Font of Power over a draw 1 Cram Session.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think Casie approached it from the position of like, I need this turn to be good, so I just need that not to be oh my yog. I need all of these things to happen, which is pretty reasonable. I think just a little giggle at the fact that Swidz tops off this start by having the Ogremancer as well.
on
It has been a pretty explosive opening from Swidz up until this point. But yeah, Oh My Yogg and Zero Mana Spells interaction is, I guess, something that's been relevant at a couple of points. I think we saw Casie throw coin out first to try and test for it earlier in the game. There's only 10 total Zero Mana Spells, I believe, and like Lightning Bloom, Innovate, Prep, 3 of them, so you can actually end up like ramping yourself off the coin with Oh My Yogg, which is pretty spectacular. And there's nothing really devastating that can happen to you outside of Ritual of Doom and Shadow Step, which are the only ones that you kind of have to consider playing around.
And like, arguably, like that instance of Raise Dead and no minions, it's not common, but like you could argue that's like just you just thrown the card away for nothing.
It's bad,
but yeah, it's not game breaking.
It's bad, but it's not active downside.
Sure. You know, the Ogremancer was dealt with. I think the right decision there, just Fireball, ping, get it gone. But look at this board, and most importantly, look at this hand from Swidz. It's not the best hand I've ever seen, but there's enough cards there to make a dent.
Just putting 6 in as many places as he possibly can is Swidz. This is an Incanter's Flowed deck, which means a drawn Flame Strike would cost 6 mana. So he is just putting the number 6 on as many minions as he possibly can. Flame Strike now, of course, buffed in the Classic set to deal 5 damage AoE instead of 4. Flame Strike being a playable competitive Hearthstone card was not on my list of expectations for 2021, but here we are. It absolutely is. It's very strong now.
What to do?
The problem here is like, maybe at this point, is it Ruined Orb into Cone of Cold? Because the 2 5/6s are next to each other? Is that enough?
Spicy.
But what I do know is that's not enough.
Yeah, went for Raz there, maybe, was his thinking, looking for an out. You know, shooting a 5/6 down to a 5/1 and summoning a 5-drop of his own, maybe was the thinking. But regardless, the outcome is going to be that he goes down to a pretty rapid 0-2 deficit against Swidz here, who I think, you know, we paid a lot of attention to last season, because it really felt like last season, I don't know if you would agree with this, it felt like the first season to me where Swidz really felt like comfortable in his own skin as a Grandmaster, I guess is one way to put it. He did still have some pretty stupid moments.
Yes.
It's worth saying.
There were mislethals.
Yes, but overall he just seemed happier, more confident, more self-assured on camera, like really felt like he was, you know, feeling a sense of belonging as a Grandmaster, I guess, as opposed to more of an outsider. And I think that's definitely something that he can continue to build on.
Yeah, and I think honestly, again, Swidz is still here, right? It's not like, yay, you know, Swidz has had his moments, we've all seen it, but he's still here, right? So he's still doing well, he's still doing well enough, and I think now he's 2-0 versus Casie. If he gets this win, and I don't know if you'll agree, Sol, but I would deem like any wins today, so anyone who makes it to Saturday, you've had an all right week 1. Right, because I would just view it, and maybe I'm just a bit rubbish, but I would view it as, well, if it's not a disaster week 1, you're off to an okay start. Even if you don't make top 4, that's fine. You've got a couple of points, no problem. It's a good start. And here, you know, all he needs to do is win with this Warlock, and like I said, I like the Warlock, but I only ever like it because I respect the amount of times I've lost to this deck as opposed to anything else. There's a few interesting choices there. Far Watch Post in the list. The double Ogremancer again seems to be an ongoing theme today. But then the late game package of Draxus and Alex Straza Binder, is looking pretty strong too. I was thinking too much Avatar.
We're just going back to the Tyler reference now, right? We've got
exactly.
We've got life benders on top of everything else. Yeah. This is certainly the deck that we shone a light on at the start of proceedings, right? As to whether this deck was able to find its way over the line, and that does still remain to be seen. But Swidz is in the best possible position to find his way out of this series. He's going to have 3 bites of the apple with this deck. Pretty nice build put together. Shows another one of those cards in the classic set that's received a buff. Siphon Soul now costing 5 and also now becoming a pretty playable Hearthstone card overall and sneaking its way into this deck alongside the masses of removal that this deck plays.
I can't believe you just said, oh, another one of the old cards that has been buffed and didn't say Lord Duraxus that no longer sets you to 15 health. You just gain 5 armor and he retains all of the abilities he had before the rotation. So Duraxus now, as you mentioned about cards that are very playable, Flame Strike last game, Duraxus is extremely playable right now. All you need is 1 turn to play it. Again, you don't get reset. If you're on 30, you stay on 30 and then gain 5 armor. Then you have that amazing 2 mana 6/6 hero power for the rest of the game. So very, very powerful tool. And maybe not as strong as the old Gul'dan in the earlier Warlock days, but still not a bad outcome here as just one of those big late game ender tools for Warlock. So I'm excited to see how it does.
Yeah, it's certainly a big deal. It is very occasionally a downside now, the new Jiraxxus, because of course, if you are lowered very, very low, it still only gives you 5 armor, as opposed to healing you to 15, which actually was my first experience against new Jiraxxus, was kind of that exact spot where I was playing against a Warlock and they were at 2 or something. And I played Jiraxxus and I was like, my god, this only puts him to 7 now? This card sucks! Unplayable! And then, of course, I had the experience where someone just jammed it while they were still on 30, and I was like, ah, yes, no, I understand now. What an idiotic move I was 10 or 11 seconds ago.
Well, here we go, kicking off an early watch post for Swidz, looking good. Rest of the hand, maybe not so much. Whereas Casie, getting off to a pretty good start here, Sultan.
Yep. Libram discount plus double Libram is a pretty huge opener as far as things go. That's slightly frustrating, to say the least. That would have, of course, been the perfect follow-up, but Far Watch Post having something to say about that.
Still kind of is the perfect follow-up. Double Libram this turn, weapon on curve
true.
next turn, seems good.
You're not wrong.
Spend that mana. So what this matchup can often come down to is penflingers, especially if some cards get burnt away from, Ticketus mainly. I guess this build doesn't run any of the other burn options, but I think Casie will be quite reliant on penflingers to end this game, purely because the amount of just straight up removal Swidz has in his Warlock deck means that you can't even rely on the 8/8s with Divine Shield and Taunt to live on any given turn, right?
Yeah, I think there are opportunities to kind of generate enough mid-rangey boards. As I was saying, that's kind of a weakness of the Warlock removal package right now, is that, if you have a 4/6 and a 3/3 Divine Shield and you kind of space all of those things out alongside your Libram of Hopes, or rather not alongside your Libram of Hopes, but you kind of just spread them out so you have multiple mid-rangey boards over the course of the game, you just don't get blown out by a single Twisting Nether. You can just get there with straight up board presence occasionally, but I do agree in that, being able to always threaten that damage from hand is a very, very big deal.
Casie showing the Ogremancer the respect he deserves after all this time. Tailwind going to come down now, which will help him draw into the Lady Liadrin, of course, if nothing messes with that plan. Don't think
this is already huge, right?
He's running Natural Silence, but yeah, the Libram's being played, the Liadrin, it's called Liabram, same thing, right? Liadrin gets Librams. That being drawn, there's just already a game plan for Casie here on a way to finish this game, so yeah, really, really big deal.
School Spirits becomes Fungal Fortunes. Okay.
Very good or very bad.
Ogremancer down. I mean, draw 2, sure.
Reasonable, yeah, just okay. I lied, it could not only be one or the other.
Oh my Yogg continuing to be unplayable garbage.
Sol has a hate campaign against Oh my Yogg, it's kind of funny.
Well, I talk about it a lot. I talked about it earlier about what galloping makes your opponent do, right? It forces them to play low tempo and They sometimes, don't play their cards. Sometimes they float mana in order to give you a 3/4. Like, what did Oh My Yogg just force Swidz to do? Play Arcane Intellect. Like, that doesn't sound quite as bad, does it?
Don't keep your
But what if you take Oh My Yogg on ladder, and then it does a lot of great things? People just don't play cards. But I will say, I think one of the fair, I guess, responses to what you're getting at is, well, what other secrets would you play? Is Oh My Yogg just the best fourth secret? you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Right.
So I guess that's reasonable in that where you want secrets and you want enough that the sword does the job right. Hey though, Casie doing a decent job of making boards that do have to be cleaned up, but aren't necessarily overcommitting. This is the moment where I just jam Strongman just to proc Ticketus and hope Ticketus wins me the game. I feel like that's what everyone does to me.
You're that kind of Warlock player. I understand.
No, I'm that kind of Warlock victim. I think is probably more accurate. I mean, I think the board might actually be too small to warrant any real removal here. And one of those secrets Avenge. So even if he kills off, say he School Spirits, then that Raven's going to get even bigger, which doesn't even reduce the damage on board.
Almost out of time. So many possibilities.
Oh, Swidz seems indecisive up until the end there, but does end up going for the Strongman. It's a shame he doesn't have a Cascading in hand, just to utilize that corruption proc on more than one thing. But that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Adrian is just already so jacked, even at this point, and there's Libram of Hope to come still.
No, there's not.
Jam it. Yep.
Yep.
No, fair enough. I'm fully on board with this.
It's very interesting though, because for this plan to work against Warlock, he will have to get those Penflingers, right?
I mean, this sets up lethal right now, right? Like, first and foremost, he does force his opponent to do something. He's forcing his opponent to, not just jam Ticketus this turn, for example.
100%. I just think you expect it to be cleaned up from Warlock a lot of the time. So, and will he actually overdraw if this minion dies?
I believe so, yeah. It must be at least 6 on this thing, yeah.
Could be a big deal. Obviously, he doesn't know this, but if he overdraws the Penflingers, that could be huge.
Of course, you have to factor in that Casie still has all the secret protection still up as well, right?
Yeah.
Because Swidz just jammed Strongman last turn. So it would have to be like an Oh My Yogg breaker into something. So cheap spell into Siphon Soul is a decent turn. It's not a good turn, but there's no way Swidz can Twisting Nether this turn. That's just not possible. It's off the table.
So he takes 4. See, Casey's done a really good job here of the way he's done his Librams is Hysteria does nothing. Not nothing, but you know what I mean. It doesn't clear the board because all the Librams are stacked on one. Just gonna shut the Spirits.
He even already... well, now Hysteria is a lot more interesting.
It's true. It just does it, right?
Yeah.
Hysteria Soul Share. What were you saying about Oh My Yogg not doing anything? It just loads for your opponent.
For your opponent, yeah. Just improves their turn.
Oh, that would have been a huge problem because he might have just been dead if he couldn't do that, right? Or at least close.
Wait. He has to do this first, and then Pony's going to appear, so it ends with a 3/4 at the end of the turn. But there wasn't actually any way to mitigate that, right? He had to do it this way, I think. Yeah, it seems fine.
I'll tell you when the Librams have stopped.
Look at that horse, Raven. That horse is amazing.
Still lethal though, right?
Yep.
Wow. Really good, bit of a heads up play there from Casie, just saying, actually, these Librams mean that if just a minion sticks because of the pressure that's been piled on, then it's just going to be lethal. When you can basically add +7, roughly I think it was, +7 to any minion that sticks at any given point, yeah, that damage stacks up really quick. So Casie does fight back. The Warlock does go down, at least for one game. And yeah, that was a tough one. Again, though, I do think that Cascading would have just changed that game so much, because it would have been corrupted from the 7 drop, and then it would have just gone off, or even the Ogremancer earlier on, right? So
yeah, we would have had it fully corrupted, right?
Yeah, and then who cares what Yogg does, right? Because then you just play Cascading, there's no minions. But yeah, wasn't to be. Casie grabs a win on his Paladin, starts to fight back.
Yeah. But even with the All Might Yogg helping out a little bit with that second Hysteria coming down, I think Swidz put himself in a position where, with what he knew, he was alive at 1, I think. But then just that Hand of a Doll being there for the 2 extra damage for Swidz was just absolutely brutal. Casie did draw into the Penflinger off the Hand of a Doll and attempted to at least have some fun with it, but Swidz had immediately conceded before any of that was possible. But I think, first and foremost, good recognition from Casie in that spot. Where the Lady Liadrin just came down. Because like I explained at the time, like it really put him in Swidz in such a tough spot because all the secret protection was there. And there was a moment of indecision on the previous turn from Swidz where he sort of scrambled towards at the end of the turn and then just threw out Strongman. Where, Casie just went, well, okay, if I just still get to have all my Yogg this turn, I also played Psychic Conjurer and took Twisting Nether from your deck, which kind of indicates that it's not in your hand right now. So if I just go all in and set up lethal, my hand can kind of set up lethal every turn for the next 2 or 3 turns from this point, and I don't think you're going to have the answers to be able to deal with that. And he was absolutely right. Swidz did not have the answers to deal with it the first time, let alone the second and third.
Yeah, and it was really huge, right? And of course, Swidz did have, the Draxus in hand all game. The Ticketus in there was pretty early. And again, although I said use the Strongman to proc the Ticketus, wasn't necessarily to play the following turn. He still would have rather have had more removal, more heal options, get more soul fragments in the list, in the deck, sorry. So yeah, it was a bit of a rough one there, but Swidz is not out here, of course. He is still ahead in the series 2-1. He needs 1 win with this Warlock, and he is going to be going up against either Token Druid or Mage. I can probably have a quick check of that for you. I believe it's going to be Mage next, and for me, at least from what I've watched and what I've experienced on ladder as well, this seems like very winnable for Warlock because the heal can be there. It doesn't always get there if all the burn comes at once, of course, but the heal can get there, and the removal basically negates those weird mage turns where they don't play minions, but they actually have more minions than you on board every turn, which can be a little bit weird, but they have the removal to do that. Then they have the late game to actually finish up as well, so Warlock does feel like he gets there. I thought anyone leaving up Mage would be bringing Warlock because of just from what I've seen, but we'll see how it performs at least in this match.
Yeah, I think, we also need to kind of go through the history a little bit. And sort of originally people were playing Cthulhu in Mage from day one, in Lunacy version or in non-Lunacy version if you were, forgot that Lunacy existed like I did. And I think having that option available to you kind of solved the Warlock matchup, but I think it's about the only matchup where it ended up being good because they turn into trash spells, the 5-mana spells for Lunacy. You just don't want them. 8 mana is about the only bad slot in the game right now, so you kind of cut those out. And they don't really support your burn-based game plan with just Mask and Fireball and Apexis Blast either, so they just kind of stick out like a sore thumb when it comes to the 2 core strategies of the deck. But when it came to a Warlock matchup, which I will agree is sometimes a little bit problematic, the ability to just draw cards every turn as much as you possibly could, Cram Session, Arcane Intellect, Refreshing Springwater, get through your deck and then Cthulhu them, like that gave you a really solid game plan in my early findings in at least this one matchup, which is not to say that I think Cthulhu should be in Mage because it absolutely shouldn't, but I do think it gave you a way to solve this matchup which doesn't necessarily exist now.
Yeah, the Cthulhu is very similar to kind of what people tried with Warlock, and I'm sure some people are still playing, where they played the actual Fatigue version with Ultra Fire and Nehru Darkblade, where, because Mage draws so fast, you don't not only have Ticketus, but you have Ultra Fire too. And if you build your deck to not care about discarding your own cards, like suddenly, if Mage goes Lunacy, gets those card draw cards, then you play an Ultra Fire once, and then maybe a Ticketus later, they're just out by turn 8. and then the only cards they have in hand are the cards they have to win with. And yes, of course, sometimes they're 10 Nagrand slams or whatever, but sometimes it's not enough. So very, very interesting of like the back and forth between these two decks at least, and you know the rest of the meta. But let's see how it plays out now as we do get into it. And backfire keep already here from Swidz, wanting to draw a few cards of his own.
Job's done.
I guess we'll wait and see if that decision will... No, okay, not doing it.
That's too bad for even me, and you know I jokes like that, and I'm still disappointed.
I know. That's why I had to go silly voice and still not even follow through to even get those words out of my mouth.
Nothing really going on too much for Swidz. Could even coin backfire, but really I just think it's going to be a tap pass, push 1 damage, and be happy with your day.
Your whole day. What did you do today? I tapped, passed, and pushed 1 damage. Wow.
So
I mean,
Big
all
day.
those things seem positive.
Yeah. Lockdown diary, day 532.
Push face.
Tapped, passed, pushed 1 damage. Big day.
See you tomorrow.
almost out of time.
Or will we? Because if Swidz loses 2 more games, he will get knocked out and we won't see him tomorrow.
Job's done.
Okay, back to Swidz, yep. Casie with the insta-Netherwind portal.
And this gets a little bit tricky, right? Because this is the beginning of the end sometimes, I feel, against Mage, where they play this and you're like, okay, you know, I'll test for counterspell. Oh, wait, they've got a minion. Oh, wait, why have they got a board full of minions? Oh, no, I'm dead. Like, it kind of just comes out of absolutely nowhere here. But not going to prop Netherwind there for Swidz. He's just going to tap and push 1 to face and continue to have a good day.
Yeah, it's different because you're describing a ladder experience, but here Swidz like poked face for 1, and then he knew, right? Like he knew what the secret was from that point because the deck lister revealed. So it could only have been Ice Barrier or Netherwind Portal. He saw that it wasn't Barrier, so he knows at that point there's no such thing as testing for counterspell. He just knows that the first spell that he casts will be a 4-drop on the side of the board from Casie, and I do. For that reason, think Netherwind Portal is a pretty strong inclusion right now. You know, we've talked about how suddenly Ogremancer is a really good card because of how spell-based the meta is, right? You can apply most of that same logic to Netherwind Portal.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And here, Shock Horror, another Ogremancer Sol. I feel like this is the star of the rotation right now, or at least it is in the European region, because once again, Casie has to deal with this somehow. He does have a stealth 4/4, which goes a long way towards helping with that. But I guess he would just have to like combustion to make it as painless as possible. Which seems fine actually. It saves him having to use 2 spells and proc Brain Freeze. He could maybe devolve and then look at combustion afterwards to actually clean it up and save his 4/4.
I mean, okay, 1 Thief is a pretty good pickup.
Not bad.
I think his intention was originally to go with the why not both line. We were talking about like maybe devolving missiles, maybe combustion. Casie was like, well, I can set up a position where like probably most often combustion did clear both minions in that situation. But he was just unlucky that not only did he only roll once on the left-hand side, it rolled into a 4 health minion.
Swidz could keep this one simple, does have Soul Share trade, and then just play a Watchtower. Or Watch Post, sorry. I always call it Watchtower. Doesn't get to tap with that though, but might just be his best shot just to cause some disruption for Casie with that +1 mana. No, he's going to go Tamsin instead. New legendary for Warlock gets to have a 0-cost Soul Share now.
Yep, very nice. Absolutely loading that deck up with the Soul Fragments now.
Who's ready for a little shorter.
Casie doing everything he can. This is kind of how you beat Warlock. You know, I described it in terms of Paladin and said how Paladin is quite good at doing it. And you've described how you don't feel like this is a fantastic matchup for Mage, which I do agree with. But you do still kind of have to try and do this. It's just that you're bad at it, right? Like, keep generating these mid-range boards, which you can do with Font of Power, you can do with Apexis Blast, but then you kind of just run out of ways to do that. Casie is doing his absolute best in just trying to stick some kind of mid-range minion presence to get some repeated damage, but he is going to run out of gas very soon.
And I actually really like Swidz just saying, yeah, I'm just going to play my Cascading on that one minion. It's just going to kill it. You know, I'm not going to try and like get more value out of the card or anything like that. It's like, nope, I'll Cascading. It's in the corrupted pool for Yasharaj anyway because it was corrupted once. And just get rid of it. Don't take any damage. Don't let that spell damage stack up. And then just move on with the turn. So I actually do like Swidz's response as much as I like Casie, you know, sort of just dropping out these threats turn after turn.
Arms of strength.
Yo, Caldera Drake stuck. Lethal. Remember when this card first came about? Do you remember Inspire, Raven? Do you remember when they thought that was a thing that we might want to do?
It was a thing for one thing.
Narrator voice, we didn't. That's true, yeah. There was one extremely good Inspire card. Yeah, no, that is true.
But yeah, other than that,
So many.
there's a reason it's not in anymore.
Yeah, not a shining moment.
Yeah, though, kind of awkward turn here for Swidz. He can draw 3, but he does take 3. Very, very powerful card, but when you're on the back foot, not really what you're after, and especially when you missed just all the soul fragments that are in the deck somehow. Does have Alexstrasza in his hand, though, so he can heal himself back up. No real need to use it offensively when you're 28.
Oh my. This is some serious damage getting stacked up here. And there is the Imprisoned Phoenix that can be used to set this up. Casie might be able to stack something approaching a one-turn kill up here from reasonable methods, yeah? Oh, what is that? Is so much damage.
Is anyone going to play Lunacy?
No. Absolutely not. Under no circumstances do you play Deck of Lunacy here. And that's why. That exact reason is why you do not play Deck of Lunacy in this situation. You are just looking for these out of your deck, as many as you can get to follow up this burn. This is just the straight up to the face plan.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And this is it, right? And this is why I think this Spell Mage might not completely go away even post potential nerf of deck, where like the spell deck.
Sorry, he's just dead.
It was actually just lethal. Oh yeah, because the reduction. Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. Anyway, this is the reason why I think this deck's just pretty decent without Lunacy. So we'll see what happens post nerf. But there's plenty of damage and enough stall as well to get in there. He could have even pinged that pig potentially. But anyway, that's gonna be. It's gonna be a win for Casie as he takes it with that mage, and Warlock falls once again. Sottle.
Yeah. And, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you felt like this would be a key part of any anti-mage lineup. There were certainly some tweets coming out early, you know, after, on like day 2, I guess, when it had already been established, you know, who the heel of the expansion was. It was Lunacy Mage. We needed to take this down. There were some tweets of like, oh, here's this deck. I played it. I'm like 20-3 against Mage or something. I'm like, are you though? That doesn't sound right. But certainly, you know, a lot of people said the Warlock was the answer for quite some time. And I do think it has a solid matchup overall, but there is a reason why Mage is the deck, and even without access to Deck of Lunacy, which again, it didn't end up mattering because the game only existed for one turn, and this is a very fundamental and entry-level point that, you know, Casie and all the players in this program are well past. But just understanding you do not play Lunacy there, just because it's the best card in your deck does not mean it's the best card in your deck on turn 8 or turn 9 or whatever. Like, sometimes you just want the burn remaining in your deck, and that was absolutely the case there for Casie.
Yeah, it's not the best card in this game, right? Like Mask was at that point, as you rightly pointed out.
No, it is.
No. In this game of Hearthstone that just happened, at that point in the game that he drew it, it was no longer the best card in that game. Yeah, he was just after more burn. But the games like that are incredible, and why, like I said, I think Spell Mage as an archetype, I would say mainly because of Refreshing Spring Water, can just get there, right? You can draw so many cards, which then equals so much burn. But for me, Sol, we're going to now move on to our final game of the series, where these are where my questions are. I don't think I can bring myself to ever have faith in Token Druid, and Casie clearly does, but I do believe the stats we've had so far for Token Druid across GM has not really looked so great for its first outing.
Yeah, Druid is in the 30s right now, which is not where you want to be. It's very high. It's just barely under 40, but it is currently in the 30s, 39% overall, I believe, going into the European broadcast for the day. That's not a good look. However, with that all said, I want to retract my earlier criticism of Token Druid, because I did not realize that it all fit on the left-hand side of the deck graphic. So therefore, it's 15 2-ofs, and therefore it's a fantastic Hearthstone deck.
Okay, well, we'll see how it pans out. The tough thing is, I feel like Warlock has only gained removal so far recently, especially with Tamsin being able to have like double School Spirits in the same turn, 1 for 3, obviously 1 for 0. I do wonder if Casey's going to actively try and play one of those slower Token Druid games where you wait and wait and wait, make the board, get the Soul of the Forest down, and like have one of those unremovable boards and then burst. Because I think if he tries to play a normal game and Swidz has some kind of answer, then it will be very, very difficult indeed.
I have been a little surprised by the token games that we've seen so far, where it does feel like people have kind of gone a little bit max tempo every turn. Which, of course, this is Hearthstone. Playing the biggest thing on the biggest board you can every turn isn't far from wrong. But I do think Token Druid is kind of a deceptively slow deck sometimes.
Right.
And that you can, take a turn off and just, greed with Fungal Fortunes and just get a million cards in your hand. And then just, super pop off with, big board plus Soul of the Forest all in one go. I don't really think we've seen any of our players playing like that so far, or any of the APAC players playing like that so far. So yeah, I am interested to see how Casie does approach it, because to the contrary, I think this is one of the matchups where that's also quite difficult to do because of exactly what you described, where any board that you make, even with Soul of the Forest on it, can just get blown out by multiple copies of AoE that can just get generated from Warlock now for 0 mana. That's just an option that they have available. So I do think this is a pretty interesting matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing, and admittedly not one that I've played a great deal of myself.
Yeah, already Casey's going slower than expected. All the games I've seen with Gibbering and something in hand, it was always Gibbering, coin, innovate, anything.
Yeah,
anything.
No, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. I think we've seen players so far who in this situation would have just made the Gibbering board and then got coin School Spirited and lost the game, right? And I'm just well, why just play Fungal Fortunes? Just draw a bunch of cards and then do something insane later on.
Yeah, as long as Fungal Fortunes is in the game, you can play a slower game with Token Druid. That's just true, because you can not guarantee, but you can rely on a heavy card draw. And look at this already, good board from Casie.
Yo. There you go. Take a turn off, be greedy, find yourself some cards, bunch of 2/4s. Much more resistant to the removal from Swidz now than just popping off as early as you can.
What is he doing? Oh, okay. Swidz is just looking at cards. Hands off the desk now. Does he have to School Spirits this turn?
He's just checking his hand. He's looking specifically to see if any of the cards in his hand are this
Look like
in particular.
this.
Yeah, and they don't. They don't. So he's realizing he's in trouble.
Oh, he is in big, big trouble. Cascading now does kill 2. Doesn't feel like enough, but his Ogremancer can trade into the 4/3s as well. Oh, well, one of the 4/3s, should I say. Face.
Yeah. The amount of times you see that decision process go through Casey's mind, he always thinks about it, but he thinks about it for 0.26 nanoseconds and then goes face.
Just too fast. He can get a good Hysteria, drain soul one and trade one, does that do enough at least on board?
So Hysteria clears 8.
And kill 3,
Drain.
right?
He kills... What happened?
Oh, we should have traded first. We should have traded first.
No, that's wrong, right? Because that like then decreases the chances of it hitting 2 on the other side of the board, which is.
But it means it always hits.
I mean, okay, Rayleigh, you're
I
miles
guess.
behind. You can't just play around the disaster scenario if it does actually make your overall chances worse, right? Like that's not a reason.
Yes, you can. You can.
You just have to say, okay, it happened. That's just funny. The casters are laughing at me right now. Unlucky. I got reverse swept on Warlock. I think you just have to hold your hands up, right?
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I will say, however short and kind of funny that end of game was, I do like what Casie did. I think he played the few turns he had to play very well, and it's something I think you should play. More players should look at. Right, this deck, Fungal Fortunes exists. You've got tons of buffs. You've got tons of damage available. Arbor Up exists. Like you don't have to rush everything out turn 1 and 2 because your follow up is almost always non-existent. Whereas follow up in the later stages of the game, as we can see here, is extremely strong. Of course, having the Gibbling start along with the high health buff, not great removal from Swidz, helps, but just the approach I think paid off very, very well there for Casie, and he could have made different choices and potentially lost that game.
Wow, that pause was like 300 times longer than I remember it being the first time around.
Yeah, the replays in half speed.